The courtroom of the Honorable Judge Patricia Wren is not a large room. But this morning, it feels enormous. It feels enormous because of the distance between Serena Ashworth Delacroix and every other living soul in it. She sits at the respondent's table alone, no attorney beside her, no family member in the gallery behind her, no hand on her shoulder, no whispered word of comfort. Just Serena, and the smooth, indifferent surface of the oak table in front of her, and the folded hands she has placed upon it, like a prayer she is no longer sure she believes in. Across the aisle, at the petitioner's table, Clifton Ashworth leans back in his chair with the casual authority of a man who has already framed this victory on his wall in his mind. His attorney, Bradford Hollis, shuffles papers with theatrical confidence. Two junior associates flank them. Behind them in the gallery, Clifton's business partner, two of his closest friends, and a woman in a red blazer who does not bother to hide the fact that she is sitting directly behind Clifton with her hand resting on the back of his chair. The woman in the red blazer is not his wife. She was never supposed to be anything. And yet, here she sits, openly, deliberately. As a statement, Clifton turns his head slightly. He sees Serena's empty side of the gallery. He sees no attorney next to her, and the corner of his mouth just barely lifts. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. His expression says everything that a man like him always means, but rarely bothers to speak aloud. You came here alone. This is already over. Serena does not look at him. She keeps her eyes forward, steady, fixed on the empty judge's bench, as though she is reading something written there in language only she can see. Her left hand presses over her right. The thin gold ring, her grandmother's ring, catches the light. She breathes. And in that courtroom, in that terrible, beautiful, excruciating silence, everyone has already decided the story. They just haven't heard the ending yet. The proceeding begins, and from the very first moment, it is clear that Bradford Hollis intends to make this a performance. He rises from his chair with the unhurried confidence of a man who has never once lost at something he considered important. He adjusts his jacket. He lets the silence stretch one beat longer than necessary. And then he begins. "Your Honor," he says, his voice rolling through the courtroom like a boulder down a hillside, "what we have before us today is a remarkably simple matter. My client seeks the dissolution of a marriage that has, by all documented evidence, produced nothing of shared value, and a clarification of asset division that will confirm what any reasonable review of the financial record already makes plain." He pauses, and then, deliberately, with surgical calculation, he turns and looks at Serena's empty chair beside her. "I would note for the record," he continues, "that the respondent has chosen to appear today without legal counsel," which is, of course, her right. Though one might read into that choice laughter from the gallery. Quiet, restrained. But there. Serena does not move. She does not react. She keeps her eyes on Judge Wren, who clears her throat once and instructs the gallery to remain respectful. But the damage, the intended damage, has already landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples move. People exchange glances. Clifton's associate leans over and whispers something. The woman in the red blazer presses her lips together, suppressing a smile she doesn't even bother to fully hide. She came here without a lawyer. That is the story they are telling themselves right now. She is alone. She is unrepresented. She is outmatched. She could not even afford or convince someone to stand beside her. The narrative is assembling itself with the quiet mechanical efficiency of something that has been engineered in advance. And Clifton is letting it happen. Not with dramatic cruelty, he is too polished for that, but with the passive, devastating authority of a man who simply refuses to acknowledge that you are a threat. He speaks when invited to by his attorney. He speaks in measured, reasonable tones, He talks about the business they built, emphasizing his vision, his capital, his sacrifice. He talks about Serena's contribution in the careful, diminishing language of a man who has practiced erasing someone while making it sound like accounting. My client, Bradford Hollis, says at one point, consulting papers he does not actually need to consult, acknowledges that the respondent was present during the early years of the enterprise. Present in the way that one is present at a construction site without having laid a single brick. More murmurs. Serena's jaw tightens, just slightly, just once. Then it releases. She writes something on the yellow legal pad in front of her, something small and deliberate. Her handwriting is controlled, even elegant. Whatever she writes, she underlines at once. Then she folds her hands again. The court reporter near the side door glances at her with something between pity and curiosity. A young woman, perhaps an intern, perhaps someone new enough to this world to still feel things. She stares at Serena for a moment too long, as though she is waiting for Serena to crack, to well up, to look around desperately for someone who should be there and isn't. But Serena does not crack. She is present in this room with a quality that the young clerk cannot quite name yet, a kind of quiet that is not weakness, a stillness that is not defeat. But the clerk is too young, and the room is too loud with assumption to read it correctly. Bradford Hollis, emboldened, continues. He presents financial documents. He presents a timeline of the marriage. He presents, at one point, a carefully worded character assessment, not legally framed but socially devastating, that describes Serena as a woman who, despite ample opportunity, failed to build anything independent of the marriage structure. Nothing independent. Nothing of her own. That is the picture they are painting of her. That is the woman they have decided she is. And in this room, in this moment, with no attorney beside her, and no family behind her, and not a single sympathetic face turned in her direction, it is very, very easy for everyone present to believe them. You are a Delacroix, Serena. And Delacroix women do not explain themselves to rooms that are not yet ready to understand them. That is what Grandmere said 3 months ago. In the drawing room of the Delacroix estate in Charlottesville, a house that has stood on 22 acres of Virginia countryside for over 100 years. A house where Serena had spent her summers as a child, learning 3 languages at a dining table that seated 24, watching her grandmother negotiate the terms of charitable foundations over tea with the same precision other people reserved for military operations. Margaret Delacroix, Grandmere, had built the Delacroix philanthropic and financial legacy from its second generation forward. Her late husband, Senator Emmanuel Delacroix Sr., had established the family's political foundation. Margaret had transformed it into a dynasty, not through spectacle, through patience, through the precise, unflinching application of intelligence deployed at exactly the right moment. She had looked at Serena across the drawing room that afternoon and said, "Do not show them the army. Let them believe they have surrounded you." And then, at the moment they become most certain of your defeat, you walk out of the smoke and you bring everything with you. Serena had understood. Because this is how the Delacroix family has always operated. Not with noise, with timing. Her father, Senator Elias Delacroix, former U.S. Senator for Virginia, current chairman of the Delacroix Foundation, and one of the most quietly influential men in 3 states, had wanted to enter that courtroom from day one with the full weight of the family name displayed like a flag. Serena had said no. She had said no because she had understood something about Clifton Ashworth that even her father, in his righteous fury, had not fully accounted for. Clifton was at his most dangerous when he felt cornered. When threatened early, he would maneuver, stall, and call in every professional favor he had accumulated over 15 years of business. He would shift the narrative. He would lawyer up at a level that even the Delacroix name would have to meet with extended legal combat. But Clifton, when comfortable, Clifton, when certain he had already won, was Clifton completely exposed. So Serena had spent 3 months allowing him to be comfortable. She had quietly, methodically, through Dominique's discreet legal work conducted entirely off the public record, assembled the complete financial truth of Ashworth Enterprises. Every document, every suppressed record, every account that Clifton had moved into structures he believed were invisible. The international holding accounts, the intellectual property transfers that had been processed through Serena's own signature, her own notarized legal signature, which had never once been credited to her contribution. Dominique, who had clerked for the Federal Circuit before joining the Delacroix Foundation's legal office, had been meticulous. The evidence had been assembled like a cathedral, stone by stone, arch by arch, in complete silence, until the moment it was ready to stand. And Serena had done one more thing. She had come to this courtroom alone, visibly, undeniably, painfully alone, because she needed Clifton and Bradford Hollis to do exactly what they were doing right now. She needed them to speak freely. She needed them to say all of it, every diminishing characterization, every erasure, every casual dismissal of her intelligence and her contribution and her worth. She needed it said into the official court record, in front of Judge Wren, under the eye of the court reporter whose fingers were moving across the stenotype machine at this very moment, capturing every syllable. She needed them to build their case on the assumption of her helplessness. Because there is a particular kind of legal and moral devastation that is only possible when the opposing party has already, on record, declared themselves completely certain of the outcome. The fall is not just farther, it is also permanent. Serena had understood this not because she was cold, but because she had been raised by people who had watched power operate at its highest levels for 4 generations, and she had learned the most important lesson any of them had ever taught her: never let your enemy know what you are holding until the moment they can no longer do anything about it. She looks down at her grandmother's ring. She feels the faintest warmth in the gold of it. And somewhere across the city, at this very moment, a convoy of Blacktown cars is moving through the streets toward this courthouse. The Delacroix family is coming. And they are not in a hurry. The morning session advances. Bradford Hollis has found his rhythm, and he is not letting go of it. He is presenting financial exhibits now, projected on a screen that faces the judge and the gallery, with the practiced ease of a man who considers himself an artist of argument. Exhibit 14, he announces, clicking to a slide that shows a graph of Ashworth Enterprises' revenue trajectory. Note the exponential growth beginning in year 3 of the company's operation, the year, Your Honor, in which my client personally secured the Meridian Group partnership. Single-handedly. Through relationships and credibility that long predated the marriage. Clifton nods, just slightly. The measured, reasonable nod of a man confirming a fact. Behind him, his business partner leans forward in the gallery. The woman in the red blazer uncrosses and recrosses her legs with quiet self-satisfaction. Serena writes something on her legal pad. She does not look at the screen. She does not need to. She knows every number on it. She knows several numbers that are not on it. Judge Wren, for her part, is professional, precise. She asks occasional clarifying questions. She notes for the record that the respondent has chosen to represent herself, which is her legal right, and she asks Serena twice if she is prepared to proceed under those conditions. Serena says yes, both times, calmly, clearly. Bradford Hollis watches her say it the second time, and something shifts almost imperceptibly in his expression. Not doubt, not quite, but the microscopic awareness that she is not behaving like someone who is afraid. He buries it immediately, returns to his documents. He has been doing this for 26 years. He knows what a losing respondent looks like, and she fits the profile closely enough that he dismisses the flicker. He should not have dismissed the flicker. Outside the courthouse, on the wide stone steps, a Blacktown car rolls smoothly to a stop at the curb. The driver gets out. He does not open the door yet. He is waiting for the others. 2 more vehicles turn the corner and approach, unhurried, precise, inevitable. Each one gleams in the mid-morning light. No sirens, no spectacle. Just the quiet arrival of something that has been in motion for longer than anyone in that courtroom realizes. Back inside, Clifton's phone, silenced, face down on the table beside his hand, lights up with a notification he does not see. His associate in the gallery, however, glances at his own phone, reads something, blinks, looks toward the courtroom doors, then looks back at his phone, then looks at the doors again, with an expression that is not yet alarm, but is the thing that lives immediately before alarm. He starts to lean forward, to tap Clifton's shoulder. But Bradford Hollis is mid-sentence, and Clifton is listening, and the moment passes. The courtroom clock moves, the second hand completes its revolution. And outside, the driver opens the first car door. Bradford Hollis requests a brief recess, granted, and in that recess, the room rearranges itself into its truest form. Clifton's team clusters together near the petitioner's table, Bradford Hollis reviewing something on a tablet, while 2 associates confer in low, purposeful voices. Clifton himself stands and stretches slightly, exchanges a few quiet words with his business partner from the gallery, who has leaned over the low railing with the comfort of someone who knows exactly how today will end. The woman in the red blazer says something to Clifton. He smiles. It is not a big smile. It is worse than a big smile. It is the small, private smile of someone receiving confirmation of something they never doubted. Serena sits. She has not moved from her chair. She does not use the recess to stand, to stretch, to take water from the pitcher on the clerk's table, though she has not drunk anything since early morning, and her throat is dry in the way that controlled emotion makes a throat dry. She sits, and she looks at the empty chair beside her, the chair where an attorney would sit, the chair where someone should be. She lets herself, for one moment, just one, feel the full weight of that empty chair. Not because she has forgotten the plan, not because she doubts it, but because she is a human being, and she has been sitting in this room for 3 hours absorbing words designed to reduce her to nothing. And she is 34 years old, and she has loved people who have betrayed her. And she is tired. She is tired in the way that dignified people are tired, invisibly, profoundly, and without any visible evidence that it is happening. The court reporter catches her eye by accident, looks away quickly. A young attorney from another case, waiting in the gallery for a later docket, glances at Serena and then away with the uncomfortable expression of someone witnessing something they cannot intervene in. Bradford Hollis laughs at something his associate said. It is a generous, comfortable laugh, the laugh of a man in his element. Clifton's eyes travel to Serena's empty gallery section one more time. And then, and this is the moment, the specific, precise moment that will live in this man's memory for the rest of his life, though he does not know it yet, Clifton Ashworth looks at Serena directly. And he mouths 2 words. It's over. Serena looks at him. For a long, still, devastating moment. And then she looks away. Not in defeat, not in submission, in timing. Because at this exact moment, at the back of the courtroom, the heavy oak doors begin to open. The doors open slowly, not with drama, not with a crash or a rush, or the theatrical momentum of someone making an entrance for the sake of spectacle. They open the way a horizon opens when you have been driving through darkness and the sun decides, at its own pace, to rise. The first person through the door is a man the bailiff does not immediately recognize. Tall, silver-templed, deep brown skin, charcoal 3-piece suit. He does not look at the gallery. He does not look at Clifton. He moves with the unhurried precision of someone for whom rooms have been rearranging themselves as a matter of course for his entire adult life. Senator Elias Delacroix. He crosses the threshold. And something changes. It is difficult to name exactly what changes. The air, perhaps. The atmospheric pressure of the room. The collective understanding, arriving before the mind can process it, that something significant has just entered the space. Behind him, Dominique Delacroix-Harrow steps through the door, briefcase in hand. Gold-framed glasses, natural hair close-cropped and immaculate. She does not waste a glance on anything that isn't the respondent's table. She moves like a surgical instrument, moving toward its purpose. Behind her, 2 members of the Delacroix Foundation's legal team, each carrying document cases. And behind them, the room hears the cane first, a soft, rhythmic tap on the marble floor. Once, twice, 3 times. And then Margaret Delacroix, Grand Mère, appears in the doorway. She is 82 years old and 5 feet 4 inches tall, and she walks into that courtroom as though it was constructed specifically to receive her. As though every column, every carved molding, every light overhead was installed in anticipation of this moment. Her silver-white hair is set and immovable. Her dove-gray silk suit is flawless. The South Sea pearls catch the light. And on her lapel, the small platinum heron. The Delacroix family crest. She does not hurry. She does not glance around the room to assess it. She already knows everything about this room. She has been in 1,000 rooms like it, and she has left every single one of them changed. Her Arctic blue eyes move with the slow, inexorable precision of a lighthouse beam across the courtroom. They pass over Bradford Hollis, who has gone very still. They pass over Clifton's associates. They pass over the woman in the red blazer. They pass over Clifton himself. And then they find Serena. And something happens in Margaret Delacroix's face that has perhaps never happened in a courtroom in all the years she has lived. The glacier cracks, just barely, just at the surface, and something that is not quite a smile, but is the ancestor of one, moves across her lips. "I am here," her eyes say. "You were never alone." Serena feels it land in her chest like sunlight hitting cold water. She does not cry. She does not make a sound. But her folded hands, the hands that have been pressed together since she sat down this morning, slowly, carefully release. Her fingers extend. She places both palms flat on the table surface. Open hands, ready hands. The kind of hands that are finally allowed to stop holding themselves. Now let us return to the room. Because the room is transfigured. Bradford Hollis has turned completely in his chair. His legal pad, the one he was reviewing with such casual confidence 30 seconds ago, has been set down. He is looking at Senator Delacroix with the expression of a man whose mental catalog has just produced a very troubling match. Elias Delacroix. Senator Elias Delacroix, chairman of the Delacroix Foundation, former member of the Senate Banking Committee, the man whose family name is on the Delacroix Institute of Law at the University of Virginia, the man whose political and financial relationships span 4 decades and 2 presidential administrations. Bradford Hollis's face does something extraordinary. It does not fall dramatically. It does not collapse in an instant. It does something more precise and more devastating. It recalculates. Visibly. In real time. Like a machine that has been fed data that contradicts every assumption it was operating on, and is now running the new calculation and finding that the output is catastrophically different from what was expected. His eyes move from the senator to Dominique, and Dominique has opened her briefcase and is already arranging documents on the respondent's table with the composed, methodical efficiency of someone who prepared these documents weeks ago and has been waiting with perfect patience to place them exactly here. Clifton Ashworth has turned in his chair, and in 15 years of knowing this man, in the 6 years she was married to him, in the 9 years she knew him before, Serena has never seen Clifton Ashworth's face look like this. Because Clifton's currency is certainty. His entire personality is built on the architecture of never being caught off guard. He is a man who monitors exits before he enters rooms, who prepares responses before questions are asked, who has never in his adult professional life allowed himself to be publicly surprised. He is publicly surprised. His color changes. Not dramatically. Clifton is too controlled for the full theatrical draining of blood from the face. But the warmth goes. The ease goes. The small, private smile, the one he gave the woman in the red blazer during the recess, evaporates as though it was never there. He looks at Elias Delacroix, then at Dominique Delacroix-Haro, who sets a document case on the table and clicks it open with a sound that is quiet and final as a lock. Then at Margaret Delacroix, who has made her way, unhurried, entirely unhurried, to the front row of the respondents' gallery section and is being seated by her son with the precise gravity of someone taking a throne. Margaret settles into the front row bench. She sets her rosewood cane across her knees. She folds her hands over it. And then she looks at Clifton Ashworth. She does not say anything. She simply looks at him, with the patient, arctic, devastating attention of someone who has spent 82 years determining exactly what people are made of, and who has just completed her determination of him, and has found the result entirely unsurprising and entirely unimpressive. Clifton breaks eye contact first. It takes less than 4 seconds. Judge Wren, who has been watching all of this with the controlled attention of someone who has spent 20 years on the bench and has seen courtrooms transform before, speaks now. "Miss Delacroix-Haro," she says, addressing Dominique, "am I to understand that you will be entering an appearance on behalf of the respondent?" Dominique straightens. "Your Honor," she says, and her voice is clear and unhurried and absolutely without performance, "I am Dominique Delacroix-Haro, admitted to the bars of Virginia, New York, and the Federal Circuit. I am entering my appearance today on behalf of the respondent, Serena Ashworth Delacroix. I also represent that we will be submitting at this time a comprehensive counterfiling that includes financial documentation and evidentiary exhibits not yet entered into this proceeding. With the court's permission, I'd like to approach." She does not wait for Bradford Hollis. She does not look at Bradford Hollis. Judge Wren grants permission, and Dominique moves toward the bench with the legal team behind her, with documents in hand, with the unhurried certainty of someone delivering something that has been prepared with extraordinary care and extraordinary patience, while in the front row of the gallery, Grandmere Margaret Delacroix keeps her pale arctic eyes level and steady and fixed on the proceedings. And behind Serena, for the first time this entire morning, the respondents' gallery is full. Bradford Hollis requests a recess. Judge Wren grants 15 minutes. The room erupts into low, urgent sound the moment the gavel drops, and within that sound, beneath it, running through it like a current through cold water, is the unmistakable frequency of a power dynamic that has reversed completely in under 10 minutes. Bradford Hollis huddles with his team at the petitioner's table. His voice is low, and he is using his hands in a way he did not use them this morning, not the broad, theatrical gestures of a man performing confidence, but the tight, contained movements of a man managing crisis. He is looking at the financial exhibits that Dominique has submitted. He has been looking at them for 6 minutes. In that time, his face has changed 3 times. First, the look of a man who believes he is about to find a procedural error he can leverage. Then, the look of a man who has not found one. Then, the look of a man who is reading something that is not merely inconvenient but structurally devastating, something that does not challenge his case at the margins but dissolves the foundation it was built on. Because what Dominique has submitted is not a counter-argument. It is a complete financial history of Ashworth Enterprises, the true history, reconstructed through a forensic accounting process that Dominique's team began 4 months ago, through entirely legal channels, drawing on corporate filings, notarized agreements, intellectual property registrations, and one specific category of document that Clifton believed he had made effectively inaccessible: the founding agreements. The original founding agreements of Ashworth Enterprises, signed before a notary public in year 1 of the company, which clearly and unambiguously establish Serena Ashworth Delacroix as a co-founder with full intellectual and financial contribution documented and recognized. Agreements that Clifton, when he restructured the company in year 4, had buried in an international holding structure, moving through 3 jurisdictions, believing that no one without extraordinary resources would ever surface them. He had forgotten who she came from. And now Clifton himself is looking at those documents. He is not reading them the way Bradford Hollis is reading them, with the professional assessment of someone calculating damage control. Clifton is reading them the way a person reads something when they realize for the first time that a thing they thought they had destroyed has not only survived, but returned in a form more complete and more damning than it ever was in its original state. His hands on the table are very still, too still. He becomes aware of Margaret Delacroix. He becomes aware of her the way you become aware of weather, not because it has made a sound, but because the temperature in the room has changed, and you know, before you look, what you are going to see. He looks. She is watching him. She has been watching him the entire recess. Sitting in the front row of that gallery with her rosewood cane across her knees and her hands folded and her pale Arctic eyes fixed on him with the patient, devastating attention of someone who has been watching men like him for 82 years and has never once been surprised by what they eventually revealed themselves to be. And in that moment, in that specific, irreversible, crystallizing moment, Clifton Ashworth understands something that he has never once considered in 6 years of marriage, in 3 months of legal maneuvering, in a morning of calculated public humiliation. He understands that Serena came here alone today because she chose to. She was never abandoned. She was never unprotected. She was never the woman he described to the court, the woman who built nothing, depended on everything, and arrived here without resources or support. She is a Delacroix. She came into this courtroom carrying 4 generations of strategic intelligence, immovable family loyalty, and resources that dwarf everything he has spent his career accumulating, and she walked in alone, and she sat alone, and she let him speak. Because she needed him to. Because she is her grandmother's granddaughter. And Clifton Ashworth, the man who spent this morning pitying her, does not say another word before the gavel calls the room back to order. The proceedings conclude, not with a dramatic verdict delivered in a single moment, because real legal resolution rarely works that way, but with the beginning of something that is already, unmistakably, irrevocably changed. Judge Wren receives the full submission. She grants time for review. She notes on the record that the financial documentation entered by the respondent's counsel raises significant questions that will require full adjudication. Bradford Hollis speaks less in the final hour than he has spoken in any hour of his professional life. Clifton does not look at Serena again. After the session ends, as the room empties and the afternoon light comes through the high courtroom windows in long, unhurried beams, Serena gathers her legal pad from the table, and Senator Elias Delacroix, her father, who has been quiet and steady as bedrock through the entire afternoon, steps forward and places his hand on her shoulder. She closes her eyes. Just for one breath. Just one. And then Grand Mere is there. Margaret Delacroix, moving without hurry, arriving at her granddaughter's side with the rosewood cane and the platinum heron and the pale Arctic eyes that are right now doing something extraordinary. They are warm. She reaches out. She takes Serena's face, gently, firmly, between both her thin, immaculate hands. And she says, in a voice meant only for Serena, "You held the line. You held it beautifully." Serena's eyes fill, not with defeat, never with defeat, with the particular, profound relief of someone who has been strong for a very long time and has just been given permission, in the presence of people who love her, to let the strength rest for a moment. The moral of this story, the lesson written in every moment of this morning, from the empty chair to the opening doors, is this: never mistake someone's stillness for surrender. Never mistake their silence for weakness, and never, never mistake the absence of a visible army for the absence of one. Some people carry their power quietly. Some people are protected by roots so deep that no storm has ever found them. And some people are waiting, with patience and strategy and absolute certainty, for exactly the right moment to let you see everything you assumed wasn't there. Before I leave you today, I have 3 questions for this community to carry. Have you ever underestimated someone, only to discover they were far more supported and powerful than they appeared? What happened when you realized your mistake? And to those who are sitting in your own version of this courtroom right now, alone-looking, quietly standing your ground, what has kept you steady while you waited for your moment? Finally, do you believe that the people who are most worthy of protection are often the ones who ask for it least publicly? Tell me your story in the comments. If this story moved something in you today, if it reminded you of your own quiet strength, or someone you love who carries theirs invisibly, share this with them. Subscribe to Karma's Heiress for the stories that refuse to let the powerful have the last word. And remember, you do not have to announce your roots to have them. They hold you, whether the room knows it or not. She was never alone. She was just waiting for the right moment to let them see it.